So about 2 weeks before our wedding, we found ourselves stranded about 10 miles out in the middle of an ocean on our friend's capsized fishing boat. And it was apparent to us that God intervened because we should not have survived. Others in similar circumstances did not survive. We're thankful that we can be here today to witness and tell you guys this story. How do you define a miracle? We would define a miracle as an outcome in any situation that seems impossible, cannot be explained by science, must be an intervention by God.
A few weeks before our accident, Brooke and I and a few friends went Spanish mackerel fishing, and this was actually Brooke's first time offshore fishing. She woke up that morning and told everybody that she had a dream. She had a dream that we were going to catch a big mahi dolphin. And I told her, I said, unfortunately, we're going about a mile offshore, and that's very unlikely. On the way out there, we saw a school of stingrays. We had a big sea turtle swim up to the boat. We haven't been fishing 5 minutes, and the line went off, and the first thing we caught was a mahi.
So a few days before we actually capsized the boat, Kenneth got a new cell phone because at the end of the month he would run out of data and not be able to text. So he got a new phone and started a new phone plan right before our wedding. And we didn't realize at the time that the model of the phone he got was actually water resistant. He just got the newest phone. And this actually was really important in our story because if we hadn't had his phone, we wouldn't have been able to have contact with anyone on land.
So now here we are 2 weeks before getting married, and we had a ball catching that dolphin. So this time we wanted to go out further and target mahi. So we're going 10 miles offshore to Tomboyette Reef, and it was rougher that day, but myself and my buddies were crazy enough to think that everything was going to be all right. And we got all the way out there, and we noticed the engine was making a noise. And I told my buddy, I said, this isn't safe. I'm not feeling good. Let's turn around and head back in. Well, as he turned the boat around, he gave the boat throttle, and we weren't really going anywhere. Well, it wasn't seconds later that a wave came over the back of the boat and filled up the boat full of water. And Brooke looked at me, and she screamed and told everybody she was going to go get the life jackets.
So when I came out of the cabin with the life jackets, I threw them at everybody and told them to put them on immediately. And at this point, my friends were standing in knee-deep water. And the captain called Mayday on the radio, but we did not get an immediate response. So my friend reached out her hand to me and said, will you jump in with me? I'm scared we're going to get sucked in by the boat. So we jumped over.
So now they have both jumped in, and right before the boat turned over, me and two of my buddies jumped in as well. I didn't have a life jacket on. But I swam over to the boat, and I used my leverage I wedged my legs underneath the rail and held onto the bottom V of the boat. And Brooke was praying out loud the whole time, and everyone was screaming. But I knew that if I could hold onto the bottom V of the boat, maybe I could hold my cell phone up high enough to get service. And for about 30 minutes, I didn't have any service, and we didn't hear back from Mayday, so I didn't know what was going to happen.
So for about 30 minutes, Kenneth tried calling 911 continually until finally he got service, which didn't last long because he immediately lost service, but he felt like he told them, Tomboyette Reef, 5 people, capsized vessel, before he lost service again.
So next thing, Brooke screams, call my dad. And that's the last thing I wanted to do. But at that time, I was willing to do whatever to get help. So I called Mr. Don, and I told him what was going on. And, of course, he was freaking out. But I told him if he would call the Coast Guard, because we had called 911, but we haven't heard back from them. And he reassured me that everything was going to be okay and that he would do so. But I told him, don't hang up, you have to stay on the phone, because it felt so good to talk to somebody on dry land.
I remember Kenneth saying things like, you're going to have to send somebody by air. It's too rough. They're not going to be able to see us. I don't know how much longer I can hang on. This is the most difficult workout of my life, because he kept getting knocked off of the boat, trying to hold his arm in the air with the phone, and then try to pull himself back onto what was still floating of the boat.
At that time I was talking to Mr. Don. I was dehydrated. I don't know how many gallons of salt water I actually swallowed. And I heard from somebody from behind saying that they felt something nudge their leg. And I knew that we were on top of the artificial reef and we dumped all our live bait in the water. And I knew there were sharks. It was just a matter of time. And I told Mr. Don he had to hurry. And I said, Mr. Don, I can send you my location from my phone, and you can take that and notify the Coast Guard. So if they do come looking, they don't have to search for us. They can come straight to us. So that's what he did. And I knew that we were 10 miles offshore, but with the wind blowing, I didn't know which way we were drifting. So I told him that with my location, if we were to have moved 2 miles, they should be able to come straight to us.
So he just kept sending that location over and over. But more time passed. We think about 20 minutes. One of our friends had a watch on, so we think it was about 20 minutes. And we heard this plane coming before we saw it, and it had a big American flag painted on the bottom of it. And it just circled around us and started dropping flares. It was the most beautiful thing probably we've ever seen in our lives, because at this point we didn't know if anybody was coming. There was a plane already in the air out of Elizabeth City doing test runs, and they redirected that plane to come find us.
Once we saw the plane, they threw out a flare to signal our location, and it may have been 15 or 30 minutes, but it didn't seem like it was that long at all, because I knew help was there. Out of the distance, I saw the Coast Guard boat headed our way. Once they got to us, they threw out a flotation device, and one by one we were pulled to safety. Once we got on the boat, the Coast Guard looked at everybody. We cuts and bruises, and a few of us were bleeding pretty bad. And I noticed Brooke, she walked to the back of the boat, and she was emotionally sick, throwing up. And I grabbed hold of her and told her that we made it. And I looked down at our feet, and there's our last name, Freeman. And that was a signal to me that God was with us the whole time.
So today we want to say thank God that we could call on him, and he was there with us in the midst of any circumstance. We can call on him, and he can give us some supernatural peace that we can't explain. We didn't have to understand at the time how we were going to get out of the circumstance. We couldn't. We had no idea. But we were just begging God to send someone and save us. And thank God we can be here today to witness and tell you guys, encourage you guys that if he can do this for us, I mean, he's still in the miracle business. He can do anything for you.